Earlier, I spoke to Jorge Benitez, director of Natosource, to get more perspective on Wednesday's developments.
Well, it seems that there are a lot of trains moving at the same time. The Ukrainian people are going through a transitional period. Their president just left office. He's just disappeared. Nobody knows where he is. He had made an agreement with the protesters, and now there's nobody to make the agreement with because he's no longer there. The Ukrainian parliament has been passing laws. And they just declared, I think, their speaker, the interim president, and they're planning to have new elections. So there's these political things going on. There's also an economic deal to kind of see they need help for their economy to how to get things going. And then there's all these security threats, the ethnic things of the Russians in some parts of the country, like the Crimea and in eastern Ukraine, that are kind of concerned. It's like, are our rights going to be protected too? So I think the West would like to see the Ukrainian parliament to kind of be more clear and transparent in saying, we're going to protect everyone's rights, we're going to move forward on the rule of law, and we're going to do something on their fair elections that's going to protect everybody.
It almost looks like a chess match in a way with East versus West, and this move happens, that move happens, and we're not necessarily sure what the next move will be. A lot of people have been saying, how is Putin going to react? What's Russia going to do? Can we get any signals, divine anything from what's happening now with these exercises?
The exercises themselves, I'm not sure if these were regularly scheduled. I did see a report coming out of Brussels today that NATO says they had been told these exercises were going to happen, but I just don't know how long ago they had been told that. But the fact that these exercises are taking place and that significant number of Russian military forces are being moved around near the Ukrainian border during this particular time is very sensitive. But overall, the East-West thing, confrontation, that's kind of Putin who started the whole thing, because this all started because the president of Ukraine was trying to have an economic deal with the EU. And then Putin kind of overreacted to that and made it seem like, well, you can't cooperate with them and cooperate with Russia at the same time, when I think that's totally false. I think it's in Russia's interest to have a strong, vibrant, and healthy Ukraine that trades both with Europe and with Russia at the same time.
Let me ask you about what we're seeing there. Are you fearful at all? There's been a lot of people talking about a potential for splintering, like what we saw in the Balkans. As you watch these protests today, is there a concern on your part that we might see that sort of thing in Ukraine?
There's a major concern that we might have some of this type of secessionist movements in the Ukraine, particularly the way Russia behaved in the Caucasus, regarding the territories of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, where they kind of encouraged secessionist movements within Georgia, and that kind of led to a military confrontation over that. Everybody's afraid that if something similar to what happened in the Georgia conflict happened in the Ukraine, it would be much worse for everybody involved.
If you were to write the next chapter in this whole thing, what would you write?
I would like to write a chapter in which we see Moscow behaving more responsibly internationally and cooperating with the EU, the US, and the UN delegations that are kind of trying to find a peaceful way to resolve this transitional movement for the Ukrainian people.
Now, I'm sure the Russians would counter and say the folks on the West were not acting all that great either. Of course, the Nuland leak, we heard about that. I guess and then the other criticism that we hear on the other side is that Russia at least extended a lifeline to Ukraine, providing billions, right, whereas the EU was not necessarily. They were going to offer some incentives financially, but they were down a road a piece. And this is a country strapped for cash. What would you say to that?
Well, I think the EU, if you looked at the whole package, was considerably bigger than the Russian deal. And we should also remember that the EU made a similar offer to Russia itself of benefits for increasing trade. But the EU does have certain standards that it expects, and a lot of it has to do with corruption, which is one of the problems that the Ukraine has, and is one of the reasons for the Euromaidan protest movement to begin with.
Jorge, thank you so much for your time. I always love your insights.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.